cold morning. Good morning. So my name is Pavan. Uh, I have about 9 minutes. So the brand that you see, my company's name is Kaha, and our product brand is Clove. What we are is an IoT smart wearable platform, and let me try and explain what that means. But before I start explaining the technology, I guess one thing that is very evident, and I think a lot of us have seen this in the last 10 years, is the consumer behavior changing. And if you've seen that enough, and I can see Vivek nodding, if you've seen that enough, I can promise you that in the next 1 year, you will see how much more it's going to change. So beware how the consumer behavior is going to change, and let's try and imagine how. Now, all of us over here would be punting on when is the inflection point coming in when it comes to smart wearables. Uh, Whether it is now, as some of the numbers from Apple indicate, or is it a year from now or a couple of years from now, it's everybody's guess, but the fact is that we are now anywhere close to this inflection point, and personally I've seen that in my life several times. So in Nokia, there was a time when we all debated endlessly about touch phones. And then one day, the whole mobile ecosystem was around touch phone. And then we debated endlessly about 3G phones. I want to talk a little bit, which I think Sunil would have witnessed. When 3G was to come to India, at least a couple of years before that, we were selling 3G phones. So we had a 2G infrastructure in India, but all the phones that were selling were 3G phones. You look at what it is right now. India is perhaps amongst the top 5 consumer of smart wearable devices. Do we have a need for it? Do we have an infrastructure for it? Is yet to be established. And that's exactly the inflection point that I'm talking about. Let me throw a few numbers. In 2020, one of the numbers that the industry is talking about is this. Can anybody guess what is this number? Sunil, let me ask you, do you think what this number is? While we've all had our experience, one of the strange experience that I have seen is when the numbers from research agencies has been revised positively 3 times. This is the number that was last placed in March of this year by IDC for the number of smart wearables that will come into the world by 2020, which is 240 million. By July this year, this number has got revised to 310 million. So that's the number of devices that we all will be using in the next 3 to 4 years. The domains in which this will come, I guess that part is pretty well established. So from where I'm sitting, it's pretty sure that there are 4 or 5 very active domains where the industry is putting their money behind. 3 of the most important ones is health and fitness, wallet, and the other one which is most close to my heart is safety. And the reason why I talk about safety right now is because when I started my journey, it was emotionally driven out of providing safety for women, children, senior citizens in emerging market. Now, whether that was an important decision, Apple announced that in the recent launch that the new watch has a safety feature for women. So therefore, it becomes very evident because of 2 important decisions that are going to impact India. One is an Apple Watch, and the second one was thanks to Mr. Modi. Early next year, all the mobile phones manufactured in India will have a safety button built into it. As an industry, there are few things which are almost moving very fast towards this inflection point. You would have read about these 3 examples in the international domain: Fossil, Constant, and Tory Breach. All the 3 companies in their next projections have allocated 50% of their budget towards smart wearables. Fossil particularly has committed all the resources by making a major acquisition of 260 million on a company called Misfit. By a show of hand, anybody knew about Misfit? This company owns its legacy to only about 4 years. In 4 years, the company's value sits at 260 million. Fitbit, the company is valued over $6 billion. Let's talk about what Kaha is. We set up our shop in 2014. We are a Singapore-based company, and we have the rest of the infrastructure now established. So we have an Indian subsidiary where we have an office in Bangalore. We have an office in Beijing and Shenzhen, and we have an office in Singapore. We are currently about 20 to 30 people. I founded this company along with another co-founder of mine, Justin, who used to be with me in Nokia. Currently, this is how our team looks like in China. When I started, our first employee was in China. This is even before I set up the company in Singapore. This is the other gentleman who came and joined us. This is a gentleman who's from his design lab in Finland, and then the office set up in Bangalore. In fact, in our roadmap, our office in Bangalore is the youngest setup. I encourage most of you, and especially you, Vivek, since we are in Bangalore, would be lovely to have you in our office. So in the last couple of years, there is a set of ecosystem that we've created, and one of the coziest ecosystem that we have created is in China. Today, we work very closely with the top brands. We work very closely with Qualcomm, Texas Instruments, Dialog, and very recently we filed a patent along with our partner Dialog on in the domain of smart wearables. We also have a set of patents which are filed now around in Singapore, in the US, and more recently in India. Our early investment came from these two companies, came from Yonest, of course, and also from an investor in Europe. We consider this investment to be very strategic to us. It also allows us to open our market in Europe, and very recently we've also signed with two large brands in Europe, and I'm very happy to talk about them as part of our one-on-one dialogue later in the day. So as a technology, we've got three key verticals that we invest in. Our hardware platform, our software, as well as what we believe is going to be pretty key to our success, which is our unique social network. Coming back to the consumer life cycle for wearables, as much as we've seen it for handphones, goes through these four key journey. The first one is your brand purchase. Brand purchase typically is something that is activated by large brands. But what differentiates a large brand to a volume churner is the engagement. We hope that we are positioned very well to make sure the engagement is something that we trigger, which leads to reference, and that leads to an upgrade. If we are able to sit in the middle of the second, third, and the fourth quadrant is what will drive our success. The utopic scenario for any wearable is how much of a consumer's life we are able to manage on a daily basis. So for 2017, where we sit today, again a few numbers, and this time I'll not ask you to guess. This is the book value. This is a book that we have already got orders for, 500,000, 500,000 orders that are already committed to us for delivery in 2017. In 2 countries with 2 large global brands in 3 verticals, which would get us all set for 3.5 million Clove Net users, which we will make sure that we engage on a daily basis. This is how our roadmap looks like, and when I'm talking to you now, this is what is getting done as we speak through our factories and ODM partners in China. With that, and about a minute to spare, this is how our first product would look like. And I think that was a cue that the gentleman who's driving the occasion was talking about. We are all set to launch our first smart product, which is targeting women. As a company, we don't hold any inventory. We are a platform. What we do is we encash license fees for our platform. And these are the 3 key verticals that we focus on: hardware, the firmware, and our unique software implementation. As a hardware, we spoke about our ecosystem in China, where we render multiple kind of PCBAs, component, chipset, and that's our IP. Then we work on the firmware, and finally our unique software. And we monetize each of these through our license fees. So at any point in time, with any customer, we are monetizing 3 license fees for every consumer that is biting into these large brands. So our larger vision is to have a connected, smart, wearable community that we engage every day. Thanks.